The train from Verona arrived late, which was normal. The platform at Vicenza was wet from a rain that had stopped 20 minutes earlier. The air smelled of diesel, wet concrete, and the faint bitter edge of coffee grounds from the station bar. Rick Hanson stepped off with his duffel bag over one shoulder and stood still for a moment while the flow of passengers parted around him like water around a stone. He was 6 feet 4 inches tall, 240 pounds, 43 years old. He wore a plain blue work shirt, dark pants, boots that had seen 3 countries in the past 6 months. His face was unremarkable until you looked at it twice, and most people didn't. The station clock read 14:47. He had a name and an address written on a scrap of paper in his pocket. A man named Ferruccio needed a hand with some electrical work at a building near the American base. 3 days, maybe 4. Cash. No questions about papers. He walked out of the station into the Piazza della Signoria. The Basilica Palladiana loomed to his left, white stone and loggias, a building that had stood for 5 centuries. Tourists drifted across the cobblestones in loose clusters, cameras up, guidebooks open. A group of American soldiers in desert fatigues walked past them in the opposite direction, moving with the compact purpose of men who knew exactly where they were going. Rick noted them without staring, 3 of them, young, clean-shaven. One had his sleeve rolled up over a forearm tattoo that looked fresh, dark ink against pale skin. They turned down a side street toward the Corso, talking low. He caught the word Ederl and nothing else. He crossed the piazza and found a bench near the fountain, sat down. The stone was cold through his pants. He pulled the scrap of paper from his pocket and read it again. Via Lago di Garda 14, Ferruccio Bianchi, 2nd floor. Ask for the American. The address was in a neighborhood called San Pio X, on the east side of the city between the train tracks and the base. He'd looked at a map in the station. Maybe a 40-minute walk. He had time. He sat and watched the square for a while. A woman pushed a stroller past. An old man in a wool cap sat 2 benches away, reading a newspaper. A pigeon walked a tight circle on the cobblestones, pecking at nothing. This was the part of drifting he knew best, the pause between jobs, the moment where nothing had happened yet and everything was still possible. He had €160 in his pocket, a room waiting if the job was real, a train back to Verona if it wasn't. He stayed on the bench for 10 minutes. Then he stood, adjusted the duffel bag and walked east. The streets changed as he crossed under the railway bridge. The old town fell away behind him. White stone and porticos became modern apartment blocks, shuttered shops, a bar with a faded Peroni sign. A dog barked from a balcony above. A scooter buzzed past, too fast, the rider's helmet undone. He found Via Lago di Garda without trouble. A quiet street of 3-story buildings from the 1960s, painted in faded yellows and greens. Number 14 was a corner building with a metal gate open to a small courtyard. A bicycle leaned against the wall, a hose coiled on the ground. He climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. The paint was old and chipped. The light was dim. He knocked on the door and waited. The door opened. A man in his 60s, short, built like a retired boxer, wide shoulders going soft, gray stubble, eyes that moved over Rick with the quick assessment of someone who'd done a lot of assessing. "You're the American," the man said, not a question. "I'm the electrician," Rick said. The man smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "Come in, I'll show you the work." The apartment was small. A living room with a sagging couch, a television on a plastic stand, a crucifix above the door. The air smelled of garlic and old cigarette smoke. Ferruccio led him to the kitchen, where a hole had been cut in the wall above the counter, wires hanging loose like dead vines. "New extractor fan," Ferruccio said. "The old one died. Landlord sent a guy, he looked at it and said he'd come back. That was 3 weeks ago." Rick looked at the wiring. Simple. A straight swap if the junction box was clean, 20 minutes of work. "I'll need to see the box first," he said. Ferruccio pointed to a cabinet under the sink. Rick opened it, found the junction box, checked the connections. They were old but solid. Copper, not aluminum. The insulation was dry. "I can do it," he said. "Good, the fan is in the hallway. The landlord left it." Ferruccio leaned against the counter. "How long have you been in Vicenza?" "About an hour." "You travel light." "I travel." Ferruccio nodded slowly. "The Americans at the base, you were one of them." "I was a sailor," Rick said, "a long time ago." "And now you fix fans." "And now I fix fans." Ferruccio laughed. It was a short, rough sound. "Okay, the job is yours, €100 cash. You need a place to sleep." "If you know one." "There's a room above the bar on the corner, via Monte Grappa. Old lady rents it by the week. Tell her I sent you." Rick nodded. He unzipped his duffel bag and pulled out a small canvas tool roll, pliers, wire strippers, electrical tape, a headlamp. The sound was faint, distant, but Rick stopped. His hands were still on the tool roll. His eyes went to the window. Ferruccio didn't seem to notice. He was looking at his phone. "Did you hear that?" Rick said. Ferruccio looked up. "Hear what?" Rick listened. The hum was gone. The street outside was quiet, a bird, a scooter in the distance. Normal. "Nothing," he said. He turned back to the wiring, but something had changed. A small pressure at the base of his skull. The feeling he'd learned over 20 years. The feeling that told him the pause was over. Something had started. He didn't know what, not yet. He stripped a wire and made the first connection. The fan could wait. The job could wait. But he knew, with the cold certainty of a man who had spent his life reading rooms and crowds and silences, that the ordinary pause between jobs was over. Vicenza was about to stop being safe. The extractor fan took 23 minutes. Rick worked slowly, deliberately, letting his hands find the rhythm while his mind stayed on the sound he'd heard. A click, a hum, then nothing. He finished the connection, tested the switch. The fan spun up smooth and quiet. Ferruccio nodded from the doorway, phone still in his hand. "Good, the landlord will pay you tomorrow. I told him you were coming." Rick packed his tools. The room above the bar on Via Monte Grappa, €100, a bed for the night. That was the plan. "The bar," he said. "What time does it close?" "Midnight. The old lady locks the door at 11. You'll need a key." Ferruccio walked him to the door. The hallway was dim, the stairs narrow. At the bottom, a bicycle leaned against the wall. Same one, same position. Rick stepped into the courtyard. The light was different now, harder. The sun had moved behind the buildings, leaving the street in shadow. A woman walked past with a shopping bag. A dog sniffed at a drain pipe. He crossed the street and walked east toward the center. Via Monte Grappa was a main artery wide enough for 2 cars, lined with shops and cafes. The bar was on the corner, a faded sign, Caf Vittoria. The window was smudged. He pushed the door open. Inside was small, a counter with a glass case of pastries, 3 tables. A man in a leather jacket sat at the far table, reading a newspaper. He looked up when Rick entered, then looked down. The woman behind the counter was 65, maybe 70. Gray hair pulled back, a gold cross at her throat. She watched him with the flat, patient gaze of someone who had seen every kind of stranger. "Ferruccio sent me," Rick said. "He said you have a room." She studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once and reached under the counter for a key on a brass ring. "3rd floor. The bathroom is shared. No cooking in the room. €50 a week." Rick took the key. "Tonight." "Tonight you pay now." He pulled out his wallet, a single €50 note. He handed it over. She put it in a drawer without looking at it. "The door locks at 11, she said. "If you're not in, you sleep in the street." Rick nodded. He climbed the stairs, 3rd floor. The room was small. A single bed, a wooden chair, a wardrobe with a missing door. The window faced the street. A view of the Basilica Palladiana in the distance, its white stone warm in the late sun. He put his duffel on the bed, unzipped it, took out his spare shirt, his wash kit, a paperback. The book was an old John le Carré, page 147. He'd been reading it for 3 months. He sat on the chair and looked out the window. The click and the hum, he couldn't place it. It wasn't a gun, not a door, not a car. It was something mechanical, precise, with a clean switch and a short-lived motor. A timer, maybe. A device. He let the thought sit, didn't push it. He'd learned that the mind worked better when it wasn't forced. The answer would come or it wouldn't. Outside, the street was filling with evening. A group of teenagers on scooters, a woman pushing a stroller, an old man walking a small white dog. Normal, ordinary. The rhythm of a city that had been here for centuries and would be here for centuries more. He stood up, stretched. His back was stiff from the train. He needed food, a cheap place, something hot, a glass of wine. He locked the room and went downstairs. The bar was busier now. 3 men at the counter talking about football. The woman was pouring espresso. Rick ordered a panino and a glass of red. She brought it to him without a word. He ate standing at the counter. The bread was fresh. The ham was good. The wine was rough but drinkable. He finished, paid, and stepped back onto the street. The light was fading. The basilica was lit now, warm and golden. He walked toward it, not with purpose, but with the drift of a man with no destination. Past the Piazza dei Signori, past the cafes, past the crowds of Americans in civilian clothes, their voices loud and easy, carrying the accent of bases and barracks. A group of 3 women in their 20s, carrying shopping bags, laughing. A man in a polo shirt, walking with the straight-backed posture of a soldier on leave. A couple arguing in Italian near a fountain. Rick watched them all. It was automatic, a habit he couldn't break. The angles, the exits, the weight of a wallet in a back pocket, the shine of a watch on a wrist. Nothing moved wrong. No one was watching him. He was just a man, walking, ordinary. He turned down a side street, narrow, cobbled, lined with closed shutters. A cat sat on a windowsill, watching him with yellow eyes. Rick slowed, didn't turn. He counted the steps, 2 men, walking at a pace that matched his own, not hurrying, not slowing. He reached the end of the street. A small piazza opened in front of him, a fountain, a bench, a cluster of trees. He stopped at the fountain, bent down, pretended to tie his shoe. They didn't stop, didn't look at him, just walked past, 2 men in dark jackets, heads down, hands in pockets. Rick straightened, watched them go. They turned a corner and disappeared. Maybe nothing, maybe everything, he couldn't tell. He walked back to the room. The bar was closing. The old woman was locking the door. She nodded at him as he passed. 3rd floor. The room was dark. He didn't turn on the light. He sat on the chair by the window and looked down at the street. The click, the hum, the 2 men, the feeling at the base of his skull. Something had started. He didn't know what, but he knew this much: he would find out. He lay down on the bed, still dressed, hands behind his head. The ceiling was cracked. The plaster was old. The city hummed outside, distant, alive. He closed his eyes. The ordinary pause was over. Rick's eyes opened. He lay still, listened. The hum was gone. The silence was complete. He got up, walked to the window, looked out. The street was empty. The basilica glowed in the distance. The sky was clear. No one, nothing. He stood there for a long time. Then he went back to the bed and waited for morning. Morning came slow over Vicenza. Gray light through the window. The sound of a single scooter engine starting up in the street below. Rick lay still for a minute. Checked the ceiling. Checked the room. The habit of waking in a new place. Confirmed the exits, confirmed the noise, confirmed nothing had changed while he slept. He swung his legs off the bed. The floor was cold. He washed in the small bathroom, the water pressure weak, the soap a thin white bar that barely lathered. He dressed, same clothes. He'd find a laundromat later or a market for a new shirt. Cash on hand, €120 plus a 50 tucked in the lining of his duffel. Enough for 3 more days of this room, 2 meals a day, a train ticket if he needed to leave. He went downstairs. The bar was open. The old woman was behind the counter, a newspaper spread in front of her. She looked up when he came in. "Caf?" He nodded. She turned to the machine, the steam hissed. The smell filled the small room. She set the cup in front of him. Small, dark, a teaspoon on the saucer. Hai sentido. He picked up the cup. Sentido cosa. She tapped the newspaper with one finger. The headline was bold, black, a single word. Uchisa. Killed. He read the first paragraph over her shoulder. A woman, 23 years old, found in a courtyard off the Via Roma. No identification, no wallet, no signs of robbery, no signs of sexual assault. The method was not described. The article said con precision, with precision. He drank the coffee. It was hot, bitter, good. When? Last night, they found her at midnight, a dog walker. He set the cup down. The police have anyone. She shook her head. Nothing, no witnesses, no cameras. She was just there. He thanked her, paid, stepped outside. The morning was cool. The air smelled of diesel and bread. A bakery was open 2 doors down, the door propped, the warmth spilling out. He bought a roll, ate it walking. The city was waking up, shutters opening, a man hosing down the pavement in front of his shop, a woman hanging laundry from a 3rd-floor window. Normal, ordinary, but different now. The doors were closed a little faster, the greetings were a little quieter. He reached the Piazza dei Signori. The basilica was pale in the morning light. The cafes were setting out chairs. A carabinieri van was parked at the edge of the square, 2 officers standing by the door, talking into radios. He didn't look at them directly. He sat on a bench, facing the fountain, the newspaper he'd bought folded in his lap. He read the article again, slower. The details were thin. The journalist had been given the official statement and nothing more, a body, a location, a request for information. No mention of the method, no mention of wounds. The police were holding that back. Standard procedure. Keep something only the killer would know. He closed the paper, watched the square. A man sat down on the bench beside him, middle-aged, short gray hair, a jacket that was trying to be civilian but wasn't, the posture of someone who had spent years standing at attention. The man didn't look at him, just sat, hands on his knees, eyes on the basilica. Americano. Rick didn't answer for a moment, then, no. The man smiled, small, not quite warm. You walk like one, the way you scanned the square, the way you clocked the van before you sat down. Rick said nothing. The man reached into his jacket, slow, deliberate. He pulled out a wallet, opened it, a badge, carabinieri. Colonnello Rizzo. He put the wallet away. You're the man who got off the train yesterday. No bags, no reservation, paid cash for a room above a bar. Rick turned his head, looked at him, flat, neutral. You have me at an advantage. Rizzo nodded. I know, that's why I'm here. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His voice dropped. The woman last night, she wasn't killed in the courtyard. She was killed somewhere else. Moved, placed. Rick waited. The wounds were clean, precise. A single cut across the throat, deep enough to sever, shallow enough to take time. She bled out where she was placed. That's not in the paper. No, it's not. Rizzo looked at him. His eyes were pale blue, tired. There's something else. The killer left a mark on her hand, a small cut, a pattern, a symbol. He paused. A switch, like on a detonator. Rick felt the click at the base of his skull, the hum in the dark room, the sound that had pulled him from sleep. He said nothing. Rizzo stood up, brushed off his trousers, looked down at him. If you hear anything, see anything, you find me. He turned, walked back across the square, got into the van. The engine started. The van pulled away. Rick sat on the bench. The sun was higher now. The basilica was warm and golden. He unfolded the paper, read the headline again. Then he folded it, stood up, walked toward the Via Roma. The courtyard was cordoned off, yellow tape, a single officer standing guard, a few people gathered at the edge, looking, whispering. Rick stopped at the tape, didn't cross, just stood, looked. The courtyard was small, stone walls, a single bench, a drain in the center of the paving stones. He looked at the drain, the angle of the bench, the position of the streetlights. If she was placed here, she was visible from the street. The killer wanted her found, wanted the body to be the message. He turned, walked away. The city was awake now, full, loud, the normal rhythm. But underneath it, something else, a vibration, a frequency he couldn't name. He walked back toward the room. The bar was open. The old woman was at the counter. He ordered another coffee, drank it standing. The click, the hum, the symbol on her hand. Something had started, and he was already in it. The coffee was bitter, thick, the way it was meant to be. He finished it, set the cup down, nodded to the old woman. She didn't nod back, just watched him with the flat look of someone who had seen strangers come and go for 60 years. He walked upstairs. The room was small, a bed, a chair, a window that looked out over the alley. He sat on the chair, faced the door, not because he expected trouble, because it was habit, 20 years of habit. The symbol, a switch, like on a detonator. He closed his eyes, let the image form, a line, a curve, a break in the pattern. He opened his eyes. The room was quiet. He stood up, pulled the chair away from the door, set it against the wall. Then he left. He walked south, away from the center, into the part of Vicenza where the streets narrowed and the buildings leaned in. The pavement was wet. A delivery truck had passed, diesel and water. He stopped at a corner, a small square, a church, a single lamp post. He looked at the lamp post, the angle of the light, the shadow it cast. The body had been found at 2 in the morning, the papers said. The courtyard was lit by 2 streetlights, one at the entrance, one near the far wall. He calculated the placement, the visibility, the time. If the killer wanted the body seen at 2 in the morning, he had to account for the light, the angle of the lamp, the position of the bench. He walked into the courtyard, stopped at the center, turned. The bench was against the far wall, facing the entrance. The drain was 3 feet to the left. He stood where the body had been, looked at the lamp. The light hit his face, his throat, his hands. The killer had placed her so that the cut was visible, the symbol on her hand, the wound on her throat, all of it lit. He turned, walked out. He found a cafe, small, a bar, a few tables outside. He ordered a panino, a bottle of water sat at the back. He ate slowly, watched the street. People passed, a woman with a stroller, a man with a dog, 2 teenagers on scooters. Normal, all of it normal. But the vibration was still there, under the surface, a frequency. He finished the panino, drank the water, folded the wrapper. Then he took out his phone, a cheap one, prepaid, bought at the train station. He didn't dial, just held it, looked at the screen. The symbol, a switch, like on a detonator. He put the phone away. He stood up, left cash on the table, walked. The street ended at a construction site, a new building going up, concrete, steel, a crane. He stopped at the fence, looked through. The site was quiet, no one working, lunch break. He saw a pile of gravel, a trench, a coil of wire. He looked at the wire, the way it was coiled, the pattern. It was the same curve, the same break. He stood there still, for a long moment. Then he turned, walked back. The bar was empty when he got back. The old woman was in the back, dishes clattering. He went upstairs, sat on the chair again, faced the door. The symbol was a wire, a coil, a detonator switch. But it wasn't random, it was deliberate, a signature. He thought about the woman, the single cut, the precision, the placement. The killer had training, military, paramilitary, something. And he had left a mark, a calling card. He looked out the window, the alley was empty, a cat crossed, paused, looked up at him. He didn't move, the cat moved on. The vibration was stronger now, a hum in the bones. He stood up, walked to the door, opened it. He went downstairs. The old woman was at the counter. She looked at him. "You're still here?" He nodded. "One more night." She shrugged, turned away. He walked out into the street. The sun was lower now. The shadows were longer. He walked back to the courtyard. The tape was still there. The officer was still there. He stopped at the edge, looked at the drain, the bench, the lamp. The angle, the light, the time. He turned, walked toward the train station. The station was busy, commuters, students, a few soldiers in uniform. He stopped at the board, looked at the departures. Milan, Verona, Padua, Venice. He could leave, get on a train, be gone in an hour. He stood there, didn't move. The symbol, the cut, the hum. He turned, walked away from the board. He found a bench near the fountain, the same bench, the same square. He sat down, unfolded the paper, read the article again. The details were thin, but he had more now. The cut, the symbol, the placement. He closed the paper, looked at the basilica. The light was gold, warm, soft. But underneath it something else, a frequency, a vibration. He sat there still, watching. Waiting for what nobody else noticed. The fountain was a bass note under the square, water falling, a constant, a rhythm. He watched a pigeon land, wobble, peck at nothing. The second victim had been a man, a civilian, a local, a mechanic at a garage 4 kilometers from the base. The article said he was found in his apartment, a single cut, no forced entry, nothing stolen. Same signature, the coil, the wire, the break in the pattern. He stood up, folded the paper, walked. The garage was on a side street, a concrete lot, a lift with a car suspended, tools on a bench. The police had been here. The tape was gone, but the residue was still there, a thin strip of adhesive on the doorframe. He stopped at the edge of the lot, looked at the lift, the car, a Fiat, old, rusted. The mechanic had been working on it. The hood was up, a tool on the ground. He stepped closer. The air smelled of oil, grease, metal. A woman came out of the office, short, gray hair, a cigarette in her hand. "You're not police." He shook his head. "I heard about the man who worked here." She took a drag, exhaled, looked at him. He was a good man, quiet, did his work, paid his rent. He nodded, waited. He came to work, did his job, went home, nothing more. Did he talk about anyone, a customer, a stranger? She shook her head, took another drag. No, he was a simple man, no trouble. He looked at the car, the tool on the ground, a wrench, still clean. What time did he leave? The usual 6, he locked up, walked home. He waited, let the silence sit. She took another drag, then spoke. The police said he was killed at home, in his kitchen, a single cut. He nodded, looked at the tool again, the wrench, the clean metal. He was a good man, she said. He didn't deserve that. He didn't answer, he just stood there, watched the street. The vibration was still there, the hum, the frequency. He turned, walked. He found a small cafe, a few tables, a bar, a man reading a newspaper. He ordered an espresso, drank it standing, left a coin on the counter. He walked to the back, sat at a table, pulled out his phone. The symbol was still there, a switch, a detonator, but now he had more. The first victim, a woman, the second, a man, different but the same. The cut, the placement, the precision. He thought about the base, the distance, the timing. The first was 6 kilometers from the gate, the second was 4. Closer, a tightening spiral. He put the phone away, looked at the man reading the newspaper. The headline was about the curfew, the patrols, the fear. He stood up, walked to the counter, ordered a panino, a bottle of water. He ate slowly, watched the street. A patrol car passed, slow. The officer looked at him, looked away. He finished the panino, drank the water, folded the wrapper. He left cash on the table, walked. The alley was narrow, A cut between two buildings, a door at the end. He stopped, looked at the door. The paint was peeling. The handle was brass, tarnished. He pushed it open. The room was small. A desk, a chair, a lamp, a map on the wall. He walked to the map, looked at the base, the first victim's location, the second. He traced a line between them, a curve, a spiral. He looked at the map, the angle, the distance, the timing. He stepped back, sat in the chair, faced the door. The light was low, the lamp flickered. He thought about the woman, the mechanic, the cut, the symbol. The killer was sending a message, a signature, a pattern. He looked at the map again, the spiral, the tightening. He thought about the base, the gate, the patrols. The next one would be closer, 2 kilometers, inside the perimeter. He stood up, walked to the door, opened it. He went downstairs. The old woman was at the counter. She looked at him. "You're leaving." He nodded. "I need another night." She shrugged, turned away. He walked out into the street. The sun was lower now. The shadows were longer. He walked to the station. The board was still there, the same departures. He looked at them, Milan, Verona, Padua, Venice. He could leave, get on a train, be gone. He stood there, didn't move. The hum was stronger now, a vibration in the bones. He turned, walked away from the board. He found the construction site again, the fence, the gravel, the coil of wire. He looked at the wire, the pattern, the break. He stepped closer, looked at the coil, the curve, the angle. He pulled out his phone, took a picture, put it away. He walked back to the street. The light was fading, the gold was gone. He stood on the corner, watched the people pass, a woman with a bag, a man on a bicycle, a child with a ball. Normal, all of it normal. But the vibration was still there, underneath a frequency. He walked back to the room. The old woman was gone, the bar was closed. He went upstairs, sat on the chair, faced the door. He took out his phone, looked at the picture, the coil, the wire. He thought about the cut, the precision, the placement. The killer was military or paramilitary something. And he was close, very close. He put the phone away, closed his eyes. The hum was in his chest now, a vibration, a pulse. He waited for what nobody else noticed. The room was silent. The map on the wall was a tourist map, glossy, folded, marked with a pen. He looked at the lines, the first victim, the second, the curve between them, a spiral tightening. He could feel the next point, 2 kilometers from the gate, inside the perimeter. He stood up, walked to the window. The street was empty, the lamps were on, yellow light, pools. He thought about the woman, the mechanic, the cut on her neck, precise, clean. He thought about the man, the second, same cut, same placement. A message, a signature. He turned from the window, looked at the map again. The base was a rectangle, the gate was a dot, the victims were X's. He traced the spiral with his finger. The next X would be here, inside the fence. He sat down, the chair creaked. He waited. The phone buzzed, he picked it up. A text, unknown number. "You're in my room." He looked at it, no follow-up, no explanation. He typed back, "Yours." A pause, then the door was locked. He typed, "No, it was open." Another pause, longer. "Stay there, I'm coming." He put the phone down, looked at the door. He heard footsteps on the stairs. A pause, a key in the lock. The door opened, a woman stepped in. Mid-40s, dark hair, gray at the temples, tired eyes, a uniform, carabinieri, Merciallo. She looked at him, didn't flinch, didn't move. "You're the American." He nodded. "The one who found the body." Another nod. "You should have come to the station." "I did." She blinked, looked at the map, the marks. "That's my map. I borrowed it. You broke into my room." The door was open. She stepped inside, closed the door behind her. I'm Marcialo Alina Conti. This is my case. I know. Then you know I could arrest you. Trespassing, interference with an investigation. You could. She looked at the map again, the spiral. What is that? A pattern. Explain. He pointed. First victim, 6 kilometers from the gate. Second, 4 kilometers. The cut is the same. The placement is the same. He's getting closer. She looked at him. How do you know the cut is the same? I saw the bodies. The first was already gone when you arrived. I saw the photos at the station on the desk. She stared at him. You have good eyes. I have time. She walked to the desk, sat down, pulled a notebook from her pocket. What else? He pointed to the map, the curve. He's using the road network, not the base paths. He's coming from outside. Each time closer, he's testing the perimeter. Testing for what? For the next one, inside. She wrote something, looked up. You think there will be a third? Yes. When? Soon, tonight, tomorrow. He's accelerating. She tapped the pen on the notebook. Why are you here? I don't know yet. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She looked at him, the tired eyes, the gray hair, the uniform that had seen too many shifts. I have a dead woman, a dead man, a base full of soldiers who don't trust the Carabinieri, a general who wants a suspect by Monday, and now an American drifter who breaks into my room and draws spirals on my map. It's a spiral. I know what it is. Then you know it's a signature, a calling card. He's not hiding, he's announcing. She stared at him, announcing what? That he's coming. The room was quiet, the lamp flickered. She looked at the map again, the spiral, the X's. 2 kilometers from the gate, that's inside the perimeter, the motor pool, the supply depot, the barracks. Yes. That's a high-risk target. He's not afraid of risk. She leaned back, the chair creaked. What's your name? Hanson, Rick Hanson. American Navy. Retired. Why Europe? No reason to stay. She looked at him, the silence stretched. I should throw you out, detain you, make you a suspect. You could. But I won't. She pulled a card from her pocket, slid it across the desk. If you see something, hear something, call me. He took the card, looked at it, put it in his pocket. The pattern, the spiral, it's not random. I know. It's a message, a symbol. He's telling you something. What? I don't know yet. She stood up, walked to the door. I'll be at the station until midnight. After that, at home. The number is on the card. I know. She paused, looked back. You're not a suspect, not yet, but if I find out you're involved. You won't. She looked at him, the tired eyes, the calculation. I hope not. She opened the door. She walked out, the footsteps on the stairs, the door downstairs, the click. He sat alone, the map on the wall, the spiral, the X's. He looked at the card, the number, the name. Marcialo Alina Conti. He thought about the cut, the precision, the placement. She was good, tired, overworked, but good. And she listened. He stood up, walked to the window. The street was empty, the lamps were yellow. The hum was still there, in his chest, a vibration. He looked at the map, the spiral, the next point. 2 kilometers from the gate. Inside. He thought about the base, the patrols, the fences. The killer was already there, or he would be soon. And nobody else saw it. He picked up his phone, the picture of the coil, the wire, the break. He looked at it, the pattern, the curve. The same spiral. He put the phone away, walked to the door. He opened it. He went downstairs. The old woman was at the counter. She looked at him. The police were here. I know. She asked about you. I know. I told her you were quiet. Good. He walked out into the street. The night was cool. The air was damp, the smell of diesel, wet concrete. He walked to the base, the gate, the lights, the guards. He stood at the curb, watched. A car approached slow. The guard waved it through. A van, a truck, a motorcycle. Normal, all of it normal. But the hum was louder now, a frequency, a pulse. He looked at the fence, the wire, the lights. The killer was on the other side, or he was coming. He turned, walked back toward the room. The phone buzzed. He looked at it. Unknown number. You were right, the third motor pool, 1 hour. He stopped, looked at the message. Conti. He typed, I'm coming. He turned, walked toward the base. The hum was in his bones now, a vibration, a warning. He picked up the pace. The gate was ahead, the lights, the guards. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the card. He dialed. Conti. It's Hanson, I'm at the gate. A pause, I'll be there. The line went dead. He stood at the curb, the hum in his chest, the vibration. The guard looked at him, looked away. He waited. The night was quiet, the air was damp. And somewhere inside the fence, a killer was finishing his work. The gate was a long concrete throat, lights on poles, a guardhouse, a barrier arm. He stood 50 meters back, in the shadow of a closed tobacco shop. He counted the guards, 2 visible, 1 inside the booth. The rhythm was slow, bored, a routine worn smooth by repetition. He watched a van exit. The guard checked a clipboard, waved it through. Time from stop to green light, 40 seconds. He filed it away. Footsteps on the concrete, a woman's voice, Conti. You came. He turned. She was in civilian clothes, a dark jacket, jeans. The tiredness was still there, but the eyes were sharper now. You found something. Not yet, but I looked at the rosters, the motor pool, the third victim worked there. I know. Hell. The spiral, the map, the distance from the gate, it's a radius, a 1/4 kilometer. Each victim was inside that circle. She looked at him, you're sure? I walked it 4 times, different hours. The first victim dawn, the second midnight, the third shift change. You walked the base. Outside the perimeter, the pattern holds, inside the fence, within walking distance of the gate. She was quiet, then she nodded, come on. She walked toward the gate, he followed. The guard looked up, saw her, recognized her. Marcialo. He's with me. The guard looked at Rick, a long look, the calculation, the size, the stillness. ID. She handed him a card, temporary, civilian consultant. The guard looked at it, handed it back, lifted the barrier. They walked through, into the base. The air was different, colder. The hum was still there, but now it had a shape, a direction. He looked at the buildings, low, functional, concrete and metal. Where's the motor pool? 200 meters, building 12. He walked, she matched his pace. The footsteps echoed off the walls. A car passed, slow. The driver looked at them, looked away. He counted the steps, the distance, the angles. Building 12 was a long shed, roll-up doors, a fuel pump, a row of vans. The lights were on inside. Conti stopped at the entrance. The third victim worked the night shift, alone. His body was found behind this building. He looked at the spot, the concrete, a dark stain still there. Time of death. Between 2 and 3. The same window. Yes. He walked around the building. The back was a loading dock, a metal staircase, a door. He looked at the door, the lock, a simple deadbolt. Was it forced? No, he had a key. Or someone else did. She was quiet. He looked at the ground, the gravel, the tire marks. He was killed here, then moved. How do you know? The blood, it's in a line, not a pool. He was dragged. She looked, saw it. You're right. He walked to the door, put his hand on the handle. It opened. The inside was dark, the smell of oil, diesel, metal. He stepped in. The hum was louder now, a frequency in the dark. He heard a sound, a scrape, a foot on concrete. He stopped. The sound was behind him, in the corner of the shed. He turned slow. A man was standing there, still watching. The man was medium height, compact, his hands were at his sides. He didn't move. Rick looked at him, the stillness, the precision, the way he held his weight. This was not a mechanic on a break. Who's that? Conti's voice, behind him. The man didn't answer, he just looked at Rick. The hum was a roar now, in his chest, in his skull. Rick took a step forward. The man turned, walked to the back door, opened it. He stepped out into the dark. Rick moved fast. He reached the door, pulled it open. The alley was empty, the sound of footsteps fading. He ran. The alley curved, he followed it, a fence, a gap. He squeezed through. The other side was a street, a row of houses, dark windows. No movement, no sound. He stood there, breathing, the hum fading. Conti caught up. What did you see? A man watching. Did you recognize him? No. But you think he's the one. I think he knows something. She looked at the street, the houses, the dark. He was waiting for us. He was waiting for someone. You. He didn't answer. He walked back through the gap, down the alley, into the shed. He looked at the floor, the oil stains, the tools on the bench. He picked up a wrench, heavy, solid. He put it down. Conti came in. What are you looking for? A pattern inside the pattern. He walked to the workbench, a calendar on the wall, X's on the dates. He looked at them, the same X's, the same hand. The victim marked something. She came closer. The dates, they matched the deaths. He knew he was tracking it. Or he was the one. Rick shook his head. No, he was a victim. He saw something. He marked it. She looked at the calendar, the X's, the spiral. Then the killer knew he saw it. Yes. He looked at the dates, the intervals, the pattern. The next one is in 2 days. She looked at him, the tired eyes, the calculation. How do you know? The spiral, it's tightening. The radius is shrinking. The next point is inside the base. Where? He looked at the map on the wall, a blueprint of the base, the motor pool, the admin building, the chapel. He pointed at the chapel. There. She looked at it. Why? It's the center, the spiral ends there. She was quiet, the hum was back, a vibration in the metal walls. Then we wait. He shook his head. No, he knows we're close, he'll move faster. What do you suggest? He looked at the door, the dark outside. I go where he goes, before he gets there. She looked at him, the size, the stillness, the calculation. That's not a plan, that's a guess. It's all I have. She was quiet, then she nodded. 2 days, I'll have a team at the chapel. No, one person, he'll see a team. Then who? He looked at her. Me. She held his gaze, the tired eyes, the calculation. You're not a cop. I know. You don't have a weapon. I don't need one. She looked at him, the long look, the decision. 2 days, the chapel, midnight. He nodded. She turned, walked to the door. She stopped, looked back. Don't do anything stupid. I won't. She looked at him, the tired eyes, the doubt. She walked out. He stood alone, the hum in his chest, the vibration. He looked at the calendar, the X's, the next date. 2 days. He walked to the door, opened it. The night was cool, the air was damp. He walked out into the dark. The hum was still there, a frequency, a pulse. He let it guide him. He walked, not toward anything, away from the shed, away from the questions. The streets of Vicenza were quiet, late, the kind of quiet that felt held. He turned a corner, a piazza, empty, a fountain dry at the center. He sat on the edge, hands on his knees, breathing. The hum was still there, not sound, feeling, a frequency in the bones. He closed his eyes, let the night press in. The first victim, Lieutenant Marco Bellini, 34, logistics officer, found in a drainage ditch 3 kilometers east of the base, stabbed, 1 wound, clean, under the ribs up through the diaphragm into the heart. Not a struggle, no defensive wounds, no signs of restraint. The killer walked up to him. He knew him, or Bellini didn't see the threat until it was inside him. Second victim, Sergeant Anna Voss, 29, dental technician, found in her apartment off base. Same wound, same angle, same precision. No forced entry, no signs of a break-in. She let him in, or he had a key. The apartment was searched, not tossed, searched, drawers opened, contents moved but not scattered, someone who knew what they were looking for. Conti's file said nothing was taken. No documents, no valuables, no forensic trace. That wasn't a burglar, that was an intelligence operator. He opened his eyes. The piazza was still empty, the moon was a sliver. FSB, the thought came clean, no hesitation. He'd seen the work before, not in the Navy, before that, a different life, a different set of skills. The Russian Federal Security Service didn't do random violence. They did targeted extractions, coercion, elimination. This wasn't a killer losing control. This was a tradesman working a contract. But Vicenza wasn't Moscow. It wasn't London or Berlin. It was a NATO logistics base in northern Italy, a hub for supply chains, communications relay, nothing high value enough for a sanctioned operation. Unless the target wasn't the base. He stood, walked to the center of the piazza, looked up at the buildings, dark windows, shutters drawn. The killer used a surveillance detection route before each kill. Conti had mentioned it, a pattern of movement, the same coffee bar, the same newsstand, the same long walk around the block before the final approach. That wasn't paranoia. That was tradecraft, confirming you weren't followed before you did the thing that couldn't be undone. He turned, walked back toward the shed. The door was still open, the light was still on. He stepped inside, the calendar, the map, the tools on the bench. He picked up the wrench again, felt the weight, put it down. The killer didn't take trophies, no keepsakes, no souvenirs, no sexual component to the scene. That meant discipline, control. The act was a means, not an end. He looked at the map, the base, the chapel at the center of the spiral. The chapel was used for Sunday services and the occasional wedding, otherwise empty, a stone building from the 1700s, thick walls, a bell tower, a crypt below. He'd walked past it once, 2 days ago, before all of this. The killer had chosen it, not by accident. He stood there, let the calculation run. The killer was former FSB, burned or discarded, now freelance, selling a skill set that didn't have a civilian equivalent. He chose Vicenza, he chose these victims, he chose the chapel. That meant the victims had something in common, something beyond proximity, something the killer wanted to suppress. He looked at the calendar, the dates, the spiral. The next one in 2 days. He walked to the bench, picked up a pencil, drew a line from the drainage ditch to the apartment to the shed. The line curved, it passed through 3 points, it touched the chapel at the end. He drew another line, from the coffee bar to the newsstand to the last known location of each victim. The lines crossed. He stepped back, looked at the drawing. The killer didn't choose the victims at random. He chose them because they were on a route he knew, a route he used. That meant he lived here, worked here, had access. He was already inside the base. Rick put the pencil down, stood still. The hum was louder, the frequency tighter. He looked at the door, the dark outside. He walked out into the night. The air was cool, the damp had settled into the stone. He walked toward the base, not fast, not slow, a deliberate pace. The gate was ahead, a guard in the booth, a barrier. He stopped, looked at the fence, the lights along the perimeter. The guard looked up, a young man, bored. Rick stepped forward, showed his hands. "I need to see the chapel." The guard blinked, shook his head. "Base is closed to visitors. Come back in the morning." Rick stood there, let the silence stretch. "Tell Conti I'm here." The guard looked at him, the size, the stillness. He picked up the phone, dialed. A low buzz, a voice on the other end. The guard listened, nodded, hung up. "She says go, straight to the chapel, don't stop anywhere else." Rick nodded, walked through the gate. The base was quiet, dark buildings, parking lots, streetlights casting circles. He walked past the motor pool, past the admin building. The chapel was ahead, a dark shape against the night sky. He stopped at the door, wood, iron hinges. He pushed it open. The interior was dark, the air was still, cold. He stepped inside, let his eyes adjust. The pews were empty, the altar was bare, the bell tower above was silent. He walked to the center, looked up at the vaulted ceiling. The killer would come here, not for the building, for what was underneath. He looked at the floor, a trapdoor near the altar, a ring in the wood. He walked to it, pulled it open. Steps, stone, leading down into the dark. He stood at the edge. The hum was a pulse now, a steady beat. He went down. The crypt was damp, the walls were stone, the floor was dirt. A light, a single bulb, bare. He looked around, shelves, boxes, a desk. A map on the wall, the same map from the shed, but different. Markings, red ink, circles, lines, arrows. He stepped closer, looked at the markings. The killer had been here, he had planned here, he had waited here. Rick looked at the desk, a notebook open. He picked it up, the pages were filled, handwriting Cyrillic. He couldn't read Russian, but he recognized the structure, the format. A surveillance log, dates, times, observations. The killer had been tracking the victims for weeks, months. He turned the page, a name in Latin script, underlined. Conti. He looked at it, the hum was a roar. He put the notebook down, turned, walked up the steps. He came out into the chapel, the air was cold. He walked to the door, opened it. Outside, the base was quiet, the lights were on. He looked up at the bell tower, a shadow moved. He watched it, the shadow stopped, a figure. The figure stood, looked down at him. Rick didn't move, let the figure see him. The figure raised a hand, a gesture, not a wave, a signal. Then it was gone. Rick stood there, the hum in his chest, the cold in his lungs. He walked toward the admin building, toward Conti. The door was open, the light was on. He stepped inside. Conti was at her desk, looking at a file. She looked up, saw his face. "What did you find?" He stood there, let the silence hold. "He knows you." She blinked, waited. "He's in the crypt, he has a map, a notebook, a log." She stood, walked to the door. "Show me." He nodded, turned, walked out. The night was still, the air was cold. He walked, the hum in his chest, the pulse in his blood. The net was tightening, the spiral was closing. He was already inside it. They walked across the parade ground. The gravel crunched under their feet. The admin building was a dark rectangle behind them. Conti kept pace. She didn't ask questions. She watched the shadows. Rick led her to the chapel door. He held it open. She stepped inside, stopped, looked at the trapdoor in the floor. "You went down alone." Rick didn't answer. He walked to the trapdoor, pulled it open. "I didn't know I was bringing you here until I saw the notebook." Conti looked at him. Her face was flat, unreadable. "How long were you going to wait before you told me?" Rick looked at her. "I just did." She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she looked down the steps. "Show me." He went first. The stone was damp. The air got colder. Conti followed. Her footsteps were light, careful. The bulb was still on. The map was still on the wall. Conti stopped when she saw it. Her eyes moved across the red markings. "He's been mapping the base, the patrol routes, the shift changes." Rick picked up the notebook, handed it to her. "Open to the page with your name." She took it, opened it. Her thumb found the page. She looked at it for a long time. Her face didn't change. "He's been watching me for 3 months. My schedule, my car, my apartment." She closed the notebook, held it against her chest. "He knows when I sleep, when I eat, when I shower." Rick looked at the map. The lines converged on a single point, the chapel. He chose this place, not because it's hidden, because it's a funnel. Conti looked at the map, saw what he saw. The only approach is through the parade ground, open ground, no cover. Rick nodded. He can see anyone coming from the bell tower. Conti looked up at the ceiling. The stone was thick. The bell tower was above. He's been using the crypt as his base, the tower as his observation post. Rick walked to the desk, opened the drawer, empty. He took the map from the shed. He left this one, a message. Conti looked at him. A message for who? Rick looked at her. Whoever found it. She didn't answer. She looked at the notebook, the Cyrillic script. He's Russian or trained by Russians. The handwriting is military. Rick nodded. He's a professional. He doesn't leave trails. He leaves breadcrumbs. Conti put the notebook on the desk. She looked at the map again. He wants us to find him. He wants to be found. Rick stood next to her, looked at the lines, the arrows, the circles. He wants to finish something. He's been patient. Now he's ready. Conti turned to him. Her face was close. Her eyes were hard. "Then let's give him what he wants." Rick looked at her, waited. "He knows me. He's been watching me. He's a professional." She paused, let the words settle. "But he doesn't know you." Rick said nothing. He let her work it through. "You're a ghost, no record, no pattern, no history on the base." She looked at the map, the lines, the funnel. "He's expecting me. He's prepared for me. He has a plan for me." She turned to face him fully. "But he doesn't have a plan for you." Rick looked at the map, the chapel, the bell tower, the open ground. "You want me to walk into the funnel?" Conti nodded. "You walk in, he sees you. He thinks you're a random carabinieri, a patrol, a sweep." She pointed at the bell tower. "He watches, he waits. He doesn't know what you are until you're already inside." Rick looked at the map, calculated. Distance from the gate to the chapel, 200 meters, open ground, no cover. The bell tower had a clear line of sight. He'll have a weapon, a rifle, a pistol. He'll have time to decide. Conti looked at him. "But he won't know what to decide. You're not in his plan." Rick looked at her. She was right. The killer had a script, a sequence, a pattern. He was outside that pattern, an unknown variable. "When?" Conti checked her watch. 3 hours, the shift change. The base will be quiet. She looked at the map. "He'll be in the tower. He'll see you walk in. He'll try to identify you. He'll fail." Rick looked at the notebook, the Cyrillic script, the surveillance log. "He'll know I'm not a carabinieri. He'll know I'm not military." Conti nodded. "That's the point. He'll be curious. He'll hesitate." She looked at him. Her eyes were steady. And hesitation is all you need. Rick looked at the map, the funnel, the bell tower, the open ground. He thought about the hum, the pulse, the cold. I'll need a way in, a reason to be there. Conti reached into her pocket, pulled out a badge, a Carabinieri identification card. It's a temp pass, it's good for tonight, it has a name, a photo. Rick took it, looked at it, the photo was close enough, the name was generic. You planned this? Conti shook her head. I prepared for it, there's a difference. Rick put the badge in his pocket, felt the weight of it. And you? Conti looked at the map, the lines, the funnel. I'll be in the admin building. I'll be watching. If he takes the bait, I'll move. She looked at him. If he doesn't, I'll have a clear shot at the tower from the window. Rick nodded. It was a good plan, simple, clean. 3 hours. Conti nodded. 3 hours. They stood there, the bulb flickered, the hum was steady. Rick looked at the map one more time, the red lines, the circles, the arrows. He thought about the figure in the bell tower, the hand raised, the signal. The killer had been here, he had planned here, he had waited here. Now he was waiting somewhere else, watching, patient. Rick turned, walked up the steps. Conti followed. The cold air hit them when they reached the chapel. They walked to the door, the base was still quiet, the lights were still on. Rick stopped, looked up at the bell tower, no shadow, no figure. Just the dark, the cold, the pulse. He looked at Conti. 3 hours. She nodded, turned, walked toward the admin building. Rick stood there, the hum in his chest. He looked at the bell tower again. The silhouette was clean against the sky. Somewhere up there, the killer was waiting. In 3 hours, he would walk into the funnel. And the spiral would close. 3 hours. He found a bar near the base. Cheap coffee. A panino that had been sitting under a heat lamp too long. He ate it anyway, counted his cash, enough for a few more days. Maybe 4 if he stretched it. The coffee was bitter. The cup was warm in his hands. He held it and watched the door, the window, the street. A man walked past, carried a bag, looked at his phone, not the killer, just a man going home. Rick finished the coffee, paid, stood. The duffel was light. He left it behind the counter. The barman nodded. He'd be back for it. The walk to the base took 20 minutes. He took it slow, measured his pace, watched the shadows, the streetlights, the gaps between. He reached the gate at 11, showed the badge. The guard looked at it, looked at him, nodded, waved him through. The guard didn't ask questions. The badge was good. The plan was working. He walked across the open ground, 200 meters. He counted every step. The gravel crunched under his boots. The air was cold. The base was quiet. He didn't look up at the bell tower. He didn't need to. He knew where it was. He knew what was in it, or what might be. He reached the chapel. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open. The inside was dark, cold. The air smelled of dust and old stone. He stood in the nave, looked at the altar, the stained glass, the shadows. He walked to the center, stopped, turned, looked at the bell tower stairs. The spiral, the climb, the cold. He stood there, waited. The footsteps were slow, measured, controlled. Not the guard, not a patrol, someone who knew where he was going. Rick didn't move. He stood in the center of the nave, hands at his sides, breathing steady. The footsteps stopped, a pause, then they started again, closer. The figure appeared at the base of the stairs. A man, medium build, dark coat, hands visible, empty. He stopped, looked at Rick. His eyes moved, calculating, measuring. Distance 15 feet. The man was standing at the edge of the shadow. Rick was in the light from the window. The difference was deliberate. The man spoke. His Italian was clean, professional. You're not Carabinieri. Rick didn't answer. He watched the man's hands, the way he stood, the weight on his back foot, ready to move. The man took a step forward. You're not military either. Your stance is wrong. Rick said nothing. The man stopped, adjusted his angle. You're American, former service. Navy, I'd guess, the way you hold your shoulders. Rick took one step forward. The man didn't flinch, but his eyes recalibrated. The distance had changed. You've been watching the base, the chapel, the tower. Rick's voice was flat. You've been here before. The man smiled, thin, controlled. I have. You've been watching me. You found my notebook. Rick nodded. I found the notebook. I found the names, the patterns. The man tilted his head. You found the guard, the first one. The second one, you found the spiral. Rick took another step, 12 feet now. The man adjusted his weight. His hands moved slightly, not a threat, a readiness. Your FSB, former, or maybe not so former, the training is still there. The man's smile faded. His eyes went flat, professional. You know the training. Rick stopped, looked at him. I know what it looks like, controlled, economical, no waste. The man nodded, a brief acknowledgement between two men who understood. You know what I am, you know what I've done. Rick looked at him. I know what you've done, I know why, I know the spiral. The man's eyes flickered, a fraction of a second. The spiral, you understand. Rick took another step, 10 feet. The man's hands moved, a shift in his coat. A blade appeared, short, utility, held low. I understand the pattern, the logic, the cold. I understand that you're going to try again. Another victim, another point in the spiral. The man's grip on the blade was loose. Ready? You're going to stop me. Rick looked at him. Yes. The man moved, fast, economical. The blade came up in a straight line, aimed at the throat, no flourish, no warning. Rick stepped to the side. The blade passed where his neck had been. He caught the man's wrist, turned, applied pressure. The man grunted, dropped the blade, stepped back, shook out his hand. Fast. Rick said nothing. He watched the man's feet, the weight shift, the angle. The man came again. A punch, a kick, a combination, controlled, precise. Each strike aimed at a specific target, the solar plexus, the knee, the throat. Rick moved, blocked, absorbed, countered. His fist connected with the man's ribs, a crack. The man exhaled, stepped back. You're better than the others. Rick looked at him. The man's face was pale, a sheen of sweat, but his eyes were still flat, still calculating. You're not going to win this. The man smiled again, thin, blood on his lip. I don't have to win, I just have to make you hesitate. Rick looked at him. The man's hand moved to his coat, a different pocket, a different shape. The sound was distinct, a click, a button pressed, a circuit completed. The man held up his hand, a small device, a button, a wire leading into his coat. C4 enough to bring down the chapel, the tower, the admin building were standing on 3 kilos. Rick looked at him. The man's thumb was on the button, his eyes were steady. You press that, you die too. The man nodded. I know, that's the point. The spiral ends, the pattern closes. Rick looked at him, the cold, the hum, the pulse. Distance 6 feet. The man's thumb was on the button. The wire was visible. The device was in his hand. Rick looked at his eyes. They were flat, professional, ready. You're not going to press it. The man blinked, a fraction of a second. Why not? Rick looked at him. Because you want to finish the spiral. You want to complete the pattern. You want to see the last point. The man's thumb hovered. His eyes flickered. Rick moved. His fist connected with the man's wrist. The device flew, skittered across the stone floor. The man's hand was empty. Rick closed the distance. A knee to the stomach, an elbow to the jaw. The man went down, collapsed. His body hit the stone. Rick stood over him. The man was breathing, unconscious. The device was on the floor. The wire was intact. Rick picked up the device, held it, looked at it. The button was still in place. The circuit was open. He put it in his pocket, looked at the man on the floor. The spiral had stopped. He turned, walked to the door. The cold air hit him when he stepped outside. The base was quiet. The lights were on. The bell tower was dark. He looked up at it. No shadow, no figure, just the cold, the dark, the silence. He walked toward the admin building. Conti would be waiting. The spiral was closed. He didn't look back. Conti was in the admin building, a desk, a phone, a window looking out at the courtyard. He was standing when Rick walked in, coffee in his hand. The steam was still rising. Conti looked at him, took in the absence of blood, the calm, the closed door behind him. He alive? Rick nodded, unconscious in the chapel. 3 kilos of C4 wired to a deadman switch. I took the switch. The explosives are still in place. You'll need EOD. Conti set the coffee down. His hand was steady. The C4, he was going to blow it. He had his thumb on the button, ready to close the spiral. Conti's eyes narrowed. Spiral. Rick looked at him. His word, the pattern of the kills. He saw it as a geometric progression, a logic he was completing. Conti picked up the coffee, drank, set it down, and you stopped him. He wanted to finish it. That was the opening. Conti looked at him, a long look, the kind that weighed a man. You brought him alive, you kept the story clean, the explosion didn't happen, the base is intact. Rick said nothing. Conti moved to the phone, picked it up, dialed, spoke in rapid Italian. Orders, EOD, a team to the chapel, a secure transport for the prisoner, a medical unit on standby. He hung up, turned back to Rick. The Carabinieri will be here in 40 minutes. The base commander wants a debrief. He'll want to talk to you. Rick shook his head. I'm not in the story. Conti's mouth twitched. You're never in the story, I know, I'll handle it. The prisoner was subdued by base security. I coordinated the response. You were a consultant who happened to be on site. Rick looked at him. That works. Conti pulled out a chair, sat, leaned back, the chair creaked. He talk at all before you put him down. Rick moved to the window, looked out at the courtyard. The lights were still on. The bell tower was dark. He talked. Enough. Enough for what? Rick turned, looked at Conti. He wasn't working for Moscow. Conti's face went still. Who then? He said the spiral. He said the pattern. He said he was a tool, not the real story. Conti's eyes narrowed. A tool for who? Rick moved to the desk, picked up a pen, rolled it between his fingers. He had a phone, burner, 1 number in the contacts, no name. Conti leaned forward. You have it. Rick reached into his pocket, pulled out a phone, small, black, no markings, set it on the desk. Conti picked it up, looked at it. This is evidence. I took it off him before I put him down. There's 1 contact, 1 number, that's the trail. Conti looked at the phone, turned it over. You think it's the same network, the one from Marseille? Rick said nothing. Conti set the phone down. The private military contractors, the ones using discarded NATO personnel, the ones who have been surfacing in every city from here to the coast. Rick looked at him. You've been tracking it. Conti nodded. Since Marseille, the pattern keeps repeating. A murder, a cover, a test. Each time there's a thread, a phone, a payment, a name that doesn't exist, and each time the thread leads to the same network. Rick moved to the window again, looked out. The EOD team was arriving, 3 men in vests, carrying equipment, moving toward the chapel. He was contracted. The murders in Vicenza, the 3 victims, they weren't random. They were target selection. He was establishing something near the base, a presence, a capability. The murders were cover or a test or both. Conti stood, came to the window, stood next to him. What's near the base that they'd want? Rick looked at him. You tell me, you're the police. Conti was quiet for a moment. There's a logistics depot, NATO supplies, ammunition, fuel, communication equipment. It's been there for 30 years. Low priority, low security. Rick looked at the chapel. The EOD team was at the door. They weren't after the depot, they were after the base, a foothold, a location, a way in. Conti turned to him. That's speculation. It's pattern. The network doesn't do random. They use discarded personnel. They establish a presence. They build a capability, and then they wait. Conti was quiet. The EOD team was inside the chapel now. Lights were moving. Voices were calling. You think there's more, someone else, another cell. Rick looked at him. He was the point, the entry, the test. If he succeeded, the network would have a location, a base, a starting point. If he failed, he stopped, looked at the phone on the desk. They'd know, and they'd move on. Conti picked up the phone, held it. This number, I can trace it, I can find the source. Rick shook his head. You can try, but they'll have cut it by now. The moment he was taken, the number went dead. The network knows they've already moved. Conti set the phone down. Then what do we do? Rick looked at him. You take the prisoner, you take the credit, you keep the story clean, and you watch. Watch for what? The next point in the spiral, the next tool, the next test. They'll try again somewhere else, someone else, and when they do, you'll see the pattern. Conti was quiet. The EOD team emerged from the chapel, a thumbs up. The explosives were secure. The threat was neutralized. And you? Rick moved to the door, looked back. I'm not in the story, I was never here. Conti looked at him. Where will you go? Rick looked out the window. The base was quiet now. The lights were steady. The cold air was still. There's a train at 600. Milan, then north. I'm out of cash in 4 days. Conti reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded bill. 200 euros, held it out. For the train, for the next 4 days. Rick looked at it, took it, folded it, put it in his pocket. Thanks. Conti nodded. The story stays clean, you're not here. Rick moved to the door, opened it. The cold air hit him. The base was quiet. The chapel was dark again. The EOD team was loading the explosives into a truck. He stepped outside, walked toward the gate. The guard was the same one from the morning. He looked at Rick, nodded, didn't ask. Rick walked through the gate. The road was empty. The streetlights were on. The town was still asleep. He walked toward the station. The train was in 4 hours. The station would be open. There would be coffee, a bench, a few hours of quiet. The spiral had stopped, but the pattern was still there. The network was still out there. The next point was already being drawn. He didn't look back. The station was a low building with a yellow facade, a single platform, a waiting room with plastic chairs bolted to the floor. The coffee machine was in the corner. It hummed, it dripped. The coffee was hot and bitter and thin. He drank it standing, watched the platform through the glass. 4 hours until the train. He sat down, put his duffel on the chair next to him, kept his back to the wall. The waiting room was empty. The clock on the wall read 2:15. The fluorescent lights flickered, once, twice, then held. He closed his eyes, didn't sleep, just rested, let his hearing do the work. At 300, a car pulled into the lot outside. Engine cut, door opened, footsteps. One person walking slow, deliberate. The door opened. A man in a dark jacket, mid-30s, clean-shaven, no uniform, no badge. He looked at Rick, held the look. Then walked to the ticket machine, bought a ticket, pocketed it, walked out. Rick didn't move, watched the man through the glass. He got into the car, sat, didn't leave. The car idled. The exhaust was white in the cold air. The headlights were off. Rick looked at the clock, 3:05. The train was in 3 hours. The car was still there. He stood, walked to the counter. The attendant was asleep in the back room. He knocked. The attendant stirred, came out. Is there a back door? The attendant looked at him, looked at the car outside, nodded, pointed to the rear of the building. Rick moved, walked through the staff area, found the door. It opened onto an alley, dark, narrow, wet with condensation. He walked to the end of the alley, came out on a side street. The car was 2 blocks away, still idling, still watching the station. He turned, walked the opposite direction, kept his pace steady, unremarkable. The town was small, a few streets, a piazza, a church, a bar that was still open, lights on, music playing low. He went inside. The bar was empty except for the owner, an old man behind the counter, polishing a glass. Caf. The owner poured it, set it down, looked at him. You're up early. Train. The owner nodded, went back to his glass. Rick drank the coffee. It was better than the machine. He paid, left a tip, walked out. The street was empty. The car was gone, but the pattern was there, a watcher, a tail, a confirmation. He walked back toward the station, took a different route, through the piazza, past the church. The car was back in the lot, same spot, same angle. He didn't stop, walked past, continued down the main road, out of the town, toward the base. The road was dark, no streetlights, just the moon and the stars and the cold. He walked for 20 minutes. The car didn't follow, but he knew it was out there, somewhere, watching the station. The base gate came into view. The guard was different now. A younger man, alert. He saw Rick coming. Hand went to his sidearm. "I need to see Conti." The guard looked at him. "He's off duty." "Call him." The guard hesitated, then picked up the phone, spoke low, hung up. "He's coming." Rick waited. The cold was settling into his bones. He shifted his weight, kept his hands visible. Conti arrived 10 minutes later in a civilian car, parked, got out, looked at Rick. "You left." "I came back." Conti waited. "There's a car at the station, a man in a dark jacket. He was watching me. He's still there." Conti looked at the road, the dark, the empty fields. "You're sure?" "He followed me from here, parked, watched, left, came back." Conti was quiet, then he got back in his car. "Get in." Rick got in. The car was warm, the heater was on. Conti pulled out, drove toward the station. They approached from the east, a side street. Conti cut the lights, slowed, parked behind a van. The car was still there, same spot, same angle. The man was in the driver's seat, looking at the station. Conti reached under his seat, pulled out a pair of binoculars, adjusted them, handed them to Rick. Rick looked. The man was on his phone, speaking, not looking at the station now, looking at his lap. "He's making a call." Conti took the binoculars, watched. "We can take him." "No, we watch, we see where he goes, who he reports to." The man's phone vibrated. He answered, spoke briefly, then started the car, pulled out, turned north. Conti followed, kept distance, 2 cars back, lights off. The man drove through the town, out the other side, onto a rural road, narrow, winding, fields on both sides. Conti dropped further back, killed the headlights, drove by moonlight. The car turned into a farm track, stopped at a gate. The man got out, opened the gate, drove through, closed it. Conti pulled over, parked on the verge, cut the engine. Farmhouse, about a kilometer in. Rick looked. The gate was old, rusted. The track was dirt, fresh tire marks. "He's reporting to whoever runs this network." Conti looked at him. "We can call in a team, surround the farmhouse. Or we walk in, see what's there." Conti was quiet. Then he opened the glove box, pulled out a flashlight, handed it to Rick. "I'm coming with you." Rick looked at him. "You're a police officer. If this goes wrong, you lose everything." Conti looked back. "If this goes wrong, we both lose everything." Rick nodded, got out of the car. The cold hit him again. The moon was high. The fields were silver. They moved to the gate. It was locked. A chain, a padlock, old, rusted. Rick looked at it, reached into his pocket, pulled out a paperclip, bent it, worked the lock. It clicked open. They moved through, closed the gate behind them, walked down the track. The farmhouse was ahead, dark except for one window, light, yellow, steady. They stopped at the edge of the yard. A barn, a shed, a tractor. The car was parked near the house. The man was inside. Rick moved, low, quiet, along the wall of the barn to the side of the house. Conti followed. The window was open, a crack. The voices came through. "The American, he's at the base. He's working with the police." A pause, then another voice, older, rougher. "What does he know?" "He knows about the contractor. He knows about the network. He's been tracking us." A longer pause, then he's a problem we solve. Rick looked at Conti. Conti's face was hard. His hand was on his weapon. The older voice spoke again. "We have a team in Milan. They'll be here by dawn. We find the American. We eliminate him. and then we clean up this whole operation." A chair scraped, footsteps, the older voice make the call, tell them to move. Rick stepped back, gestured to Conti. They moved away from the window, back to the barn, into the shadows. Conti's voice was a whisper, "They're coming for you." Rick looked at him. "I know." "What do we do?" Rick looked at the farmhouse, the light in the window, the man inside, the phone that was about to send a team to kill him. "We don't wait for them to come to us." He moved fast toward the farmhouse door. Conti followed, hand on his weapon. The door burst open. Rick was inside. The man was at the table. The older man was standing, phone in his hand. Rick crossed the room in 3 steps. His hand caught the older man's wrist, twisted. The phone dropped, hit the floor. The younger man moved. Rick's elbow caught him in the chest. He went down, gasping. The older man tried to pull away. Rick's other hand closed on his throat, pushed him against the wall. Conti was in the doorway, weapon drawn, covering the room. Rick looked at the older man, held his gaze. "You were going to send a team to Milan to find me." The older man said nothing. Rick squeezed, not hard, just enough. "Who runs the network?" The older man's eyes flickered, to the left, to the window. Rick looked. The window was dark, but there was a shape, a reflection, movement. He released the older man, turned. The window shattered. A round hit the wall next to his head. Plaster exploded. He dropped, rolled, came up behind the table. Conti fired 2 rounds. The window frame splintered. Return fire came, 2 more rounds. Conti went down, hit the floor, his weapon clattered. Rick moved, fast, low to the window. He looked out. A figure was running across the yard toward the barn. He went over the sill, hit the ground, ran. The figure was fast, experienced, military training. The figure reached the barn, turned, fired. The round went wide. Rick kept moving, closed the distance. The figure was at the barn door, fumbling for the latch. Rick hit him, shoulder to chest. They both went down. The weapon skidded across the dirt. Rick came up first, his fist connected, 1, 2. The figure went still. He looked back at the farmhouse. Conti was on his knees, one hand on his shoulder, blood, dark and wet. Rick stood, walked back. The older man was gone. The younger man was gone. Both had slipped out the back. He knelt next to Conti. "You're hit." Conti's face was white. "I know." Rick looked at the wound. Shoulder, through and through, bleeding but not arterial. He tore a strip from his shirt, packed it, pressed. "You'll live." Conti looked at him. "They got away." Rick looked at the dark fields, the farm track, the open gate. "They'll be back. They've got a team in Milan. They've got your name now. You're not clean anymore." Conti was quiet. Then, "Neither are you." Rick stood, looked at the sky. The moon was still high. The cold was still there. The spiral had tightened, and now it was pulling him in. A police radio crackled from Conti's car. Distant, urgent. Someone was looking for them. Rick looked at Conti. "I'll get you to the road, then I'm gone." Conti nodded. "The train at 600. Rick shook his head. "They'll be watching the station. I'll find another way." He helped Conti up, walked him toward the car. The blood was soaking through the bandage, but Conti was steady, walking. The night was quiet. The farmhouse was dark. The bodies were still. The pattern was broken. But the network was still out there, and now it had a name. Rick looked at the road ahead. The next town, the next train, the next point in the spiral. He started walking. He walked 5 miles, maybe 6. The road was empty. The cold was dry. His boots were good. His duffel was light. A truck stop appeared at dawn. Diesel fumes, fluorescent hum, a man in coveralls filling a tank. Rick walked in. The air was warm, grease, coffee, old sweat. The man behind the counter looked up, saw the size, saw the stillness, looked back down. Rick bought coffee, black, a roll, hard bread. He sat at the window, watched the road. He had €40, a train pass with 2 days left, a phone that was clean, a name that was not. He ate the roll, drank the coffee, thought about the spiral, the farmhouse, the older man, the younger man, the shooter in the dark. They had a team in Milan. They had Conti's name, they had his face, from the farmhouse, from the road, from the station in Vicenza. He finished the coffee, stood, walked to the counter. "Is there a bus?" The man pointed. "South to Padua, 40 minutes. Rick nodded, paid €1.50. The change was warm in his palm. He waited outside. The air was cold, the sun was low, the road was wet with frost. His phone buzzed, a number he didn't know. He answered, said nothing. A voice, female, Italian, formal. "Signor Hanson." He waited. "This is Commissario Conti." A pause. He recognized the voice, the weight in it. "You're alive." "Surgical, they patched me, I'm off the board." "Good." "They're looking for you, the team from Milan. They have your description, your name, your face." "I know. There's a man, he runs the network from the north, near Bolzano, a town called Murano." Rick listened. The bus was coming, he could see it, a white shape on the road. "Why are you telling me?" A pause, then, "Because you're not going to stop, and I want to know where the bodies fall." The bus pulled up, the doors opened, the driver looked at him. Rick spoke into the phone. "Murano." "Yes." "Thank you." He hung up, stepped onto the bus. Paid, sat in the back. The engine rumbled, the heat was weak, the windows were fogged. He watched the road, the fields, the hills, the sun climbing, the cold easing. The bus stopped in Padua. He got off, walked through the station. The train boards were bright. Milan, Venice, Bolzano. He bought a ticket, cash, Bolzano, second class, one way. The train was late. He waited on the platform. The air was diesel and wet concrete. A woman with a child, a man with a suitcase, a soldier in uniform. The soldier looked at him, held the gaze. Rick looked back, steady, flat. The soldier looked away. The train came. He got on, found a seat by the window. The compartment was empty. He put his duffel on the seat beside him. The train moved. North through the plain, the fields were brown, the sky was gray, the mountains were distant, white-tipped. He closed his eyes, not sleeping, resting, counting. Cash, €38. Food, 1 roll. Water, half a bottle. Distance from Murano, 2 hours. Time until dark, 6 hours. The conductor came, checked his ticket, looked at him twice. Rick's face was clean, his clothes were plain, his hands were still. The conductor moved on. The train stopped in Trento. A group got on, 2 men, a woman. They sat in the compartment, talked, laughing, tourists. Rick looked out the window. The mountains were closer now. The air was thinner, the light was different. The train moved again. The tunnel came, dark, then light, then the valley opened. Bolzano, the station was clean, modern, glass and steel. He got off, walked through the concourse. The air was cold, alpine, clean. He found a map. Murano was west 40 kilometers, a bus, a train, a road. He walked out of the station. The town was quiet. A Sunday, shops closed, a few cars, a man walking a dog. He found a bench, sat, looked at the mountains. The sun was low, the shadow was long. He had time, he had a name, he had a direction. The spiral was tightening. The next turn was Murano, the man who ran the network, the man who sent the team to Milan, the man who knew his face. He stood, walked to the bus stop. The schedule was posted. 1 bus, 1700 hours, Murano. He waited. The air was cold. His breath was white. His hands were in his pockets. The bus came. He got on, paid, sat in the back. The driver was old, quiet. The road was winding. The valley was narrow. The sun dropped behind the mountains. The light turned gold, then gray, then gone. Murano was small, a town of old stone and narrow streets. The bus stopped at the square. He got off. The air was colder. The stars were bright. He walked, found a bar, a place with a sign, warm light, wooden tables, a man inside, alone. He went in, ordered coffee, sat at the bar. The man looked at him, nodded. Rick drank the coffee. It was strong, bitter, good. He looked at the man. "I'm looking for someone." The man waited. "A man, he runs things in this town." The man's eyes flickered, to the door, to the window, back to Rick. "I don't know anyone like that." Rick put a €5 note on the bar, pushed it forward. "The man who runs the network, from the farmhouse, near Vicenza." The man looked at the note, then at Rick, then at the door. "There's a villa on the hill, outside town, the old road, a man named Ferry." Rick nodded, stood, left the note. He walked out. The town was dark. The hill was a shape against the stars. The old road was narrow, unlit. He started walking. The climb was steep. The air was thin. His breath was steady. His pace was even. The villa appeared. A wall, a gate, a light in the window. He stopped, looked, counted. Distance 200 meters. Cover none. Approach open. Angle bad. He waited. The light went out, then came on again, a signal. He moved along the wall to the gate. It was locked, iron tall. He found a gap, a tree, a branch over the wall. He climbed, quiet, fast, over, landed on soft earth. The garden was dark. The villa was large, stone, old, a terrace, a door. He crossed the garden. His boots were silent. The grass was wet. The air was still. He reached the door. It was wood, heavy, a lock old. He pushed, it opened. The hinge was oiled. He stepped inside. The hall was dark, a single lamp, a staircase, a door to the right, a door to the left. He listened, a voice from upstairs, a man speaking Italian, calm, confident. Rick moved up the stairs. The wood was old, the steps were quiet. He reached the landing, a door, light under it. He opened it. The room was a study, books, a desk, a man behind it, older, gray hair, a glass of wine in his hand. The man looked up, saw him, did not move. "You're the American." Rick closed the door behind him. "You're Ferry." The man smiled, thin, cold. "You're early. The team from Milan hasn't arrived yet." Rick walked to the desk, stopped, looked down at the man. "They're not coming." Ferry's smile faded. His hand moved toward the desk drawer. Rick's hand moved first, caught Ferry's wrist, twisted. The man's hand opened. The drawer stayed closed. "You sent a team to kill me. In Vicenza, in Milan, at the farmhouse." Ferry's face was white. His breath was shallow. "I don't know what you're talking about." Rick squeezed. The bone shifted. Ferry gasped. "The network, the farmhouse, the older man, the younger man, the shooter." Ferry's eyes were wide. "I don't." Rick squeezed harder. Ferry's hand went limp. "Tell me." Ferry's voice was a whisper. "It's not a network, it's a family. The older man is my brother. The younger man is his son. The shooter is mine." Rick held his gaze. "Why?" "You interfered with a transaction in Vicenza. You cost us money, you cost us men." "The woman in the house, the one I took." Ferry nodded. "She was a witness to a shipment. We were closing her. You opened the door." Rick stood quiet still. "It ends now." Ferry's face was pale. "You kill me. They'll come, my brother, my nephew, every man I have. They'll hunt you." Rick looked at him, flat, cold. "Let them." He turned, walked to the door, opened it, paused. "Tell them I'm coming." He left, down the stairs, through the hall, out the door, across the garden, over the wall. The road was dark. The town was quiet. The mountains were black against the stars. He walked. The cold was deep. The spiral was tight. The net was closing. But he was still moving, and the drift continued. The sound of his boots on the road, steady, even, one step at a time, into the dark.